Hello and welcome back to Women of Color in Intimate Conversation, a top 20 women's empowerment podcast. I'm Denine Garrett, and if you haven't listened to part one of this conversation yet, go back. Right now, it's worth it. Today, we're in part two with Rima Desai. She is a transformational life coach, spiritual healer, and counseling psychologist. In our first session, Rima took us through her childhood, the loss of her mother at 6, and a season in Tanzania that ended when her daughter's soul called her elsewhere. Today, we go into the work, the beliefs, the healing, and what it truly means to go beyond. Rima, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, again, last time you left us with Tanzania and a departure driven by something bigger than logic. That kind of trust doesn't come from nowhere. I want to understand the interior work that made that level of surrender possible. So let's talk about those limited beliefs that shape our reality. Where do they come from, and how early do they take root?
I want to start with how early do they take root, especially in a culture like if you're Asian, like as I'm referring to the audience here, or from India, like Indian in that sense, coming from the country of India, you will understand more deeply what I'm saying. We have so many limited beliefs, especially like my generation onwards, we're starting to recognize that as women. The amount and the extent is humongous. Like it's unbelievable how many limited beliefs you can have. And that's not coming from necessarily just your family's upbringing or lack of awareness. I see it coming from a whole genetic passing of several generations. And until someone shifts and does something differently, you're going to continue passing in your genes. Because what is genes? Genes is nothing but a conditioning of sorts that's passed on. So when you've done something repeatedly, whether you've taught something, acted in a certain way, learned a certain skill, when you've done it, it's so ingrained in every being of you that even when the body transitions, the soul says, I'm going to hold on to this because I have deeply rooted it within my essence, my identity. Right? So, a simple belief in India growing up, believe it or not, we were taught as women, we would have all of these gatherings. We're a very gregarious culture. We meet a lot to eat together, right? And women are always on the forefront of being in the kitchen and cooking and serving. We literally have to let the men eat first. At least that's how I grew up. Maybe today's generation may feel a little differently, even back in India. But when I was 16 and when I was at 20 in my teens, early or late teens, all the men will always eat first. Why? Because they're working hard, they're bringing in the money. What about the women staying home, watching kids, cooking, cleaning? That's not considered hard work. That's not considered as important. We had to eat all the leftovers. We always had to be the last to eat. We always had to be eat the leftovers. And that was considered as I'm respecting the husband, I'm respecting the man. That's a very limited belief, right? Very, very limited in that sense. And there's many such beliefs.
Yes.
But some of the other beliefs are also not necessarily rooted in culture. It makes me curious of where do they come from? I think it's a human civilization. Again, it's the repetition. You've just lived a certain way without intention or without giving it thought or, a second um a question, right? A second thought. So just women telling me or me feeling the XYZ is going to be hard. Earning money is hard. Like I came to the United States, it's going to be so hard for me to start my career because there's a belief there that's set when you have XYZ circumstances, only then life is easy. So we can dive into a lot of that, but I think it's just the learning of you have to learn to live differently and question and be curious about
Yes.
everything.
No, absolutely, right? Because, pretty much what you share, that happens across, different cultures, because the society is pretty much rooted in patriarchy, right? So the men are coming first and historically for the same reasons. Different thing, things are different today, but a lot of that comes from that. So it's growing out of that, it's getting away from that. You mentioned how it's generational. There's trauma, attached to it and as well. And so reshaping and rethinking those beliefs is important. And so your work helps with that. Now, you've invested years in your own inner transformation, time, money, energy, consciousness. What did you have to unlearn first? And what are your three twin flames?
Yeah. That's like those are stories of goosebumps if I could tell you more about them. But to start with, I will say I was lucky. I've been very lucky to come with a consciousness that's grown, I would say, over incarnations where I didn't feel like I had to unlearn anything because I'm a very bold, courageous person. I've been that way. That's why I've survived what I've
Yeah.
survived. Besides one of my like the main twin flame, my best friend's, arrival in my life because of whom I'm alive today, I would say. When we were teens, the universe said, let me send you someone very important who's a part of you, and they're going to make sure that they carry you through these rough waters. And I got my second mom from that. But what I'll come to in terms of unlearning, because I had the inner drive somewhere to say, I am not okay with this circumstance. I am not okay with not being okay. I'm not okay feeling miserable. I've got to find a way. And even when I was 12 and I felt like this is a cage, I'm living in a cage in this home. I don't have freedom. I don't have money. I don't have like resources of where to go to how to feel better. I kept always dreaming one day, literally, I would feel like a bird in a cage. One day I will be out of here. So that vision, that drive was very important. Um, the moment I got a chance, I got my master's in psychology. While I was doing my master's, I almost saw no other student, maybe 0.1% student do it. I consciously decided if going to become a psychologist, I need to go through rigorous therapy myself. I also knew, my life history was like it definitely needed attention, all of my emotional trauma. So I took 2.5 years of therapy from the pro, he is one of our teachers, really excellent at his work. Dr. Mukul Joshi, I'm going to say his name because he is amazing and he deserves that recognition. There's a lot of like other things that have happened. So that's one of the reasons I'm saying he deserves his recognition. He's amazing he's gotten many souls through. And because of his fantastic therapy, you need someone to come from the amount of trauma that I've come, you cannot have a regular therapist who've just taken a course. They need to have the deep perception and understanding of grief and human behavior and how to
Mhm.
get someone through that. And every week for 2.5 years, I use my pocket money. So I think if you're asking unlearn, many women will have to unlearn to let go of saying the excuses that they make to themselves. We can make a million excuses and say, I don't have the money.
Yeah.
It's just a very simple statement. It's a great way to create a wall when actually none of that is most of the time true.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say I didn't have to unlearn, but I will say that it took a lot of, even after doing therapy, I landed in a marriage that was a better version of, my childhood. Nobody's fault. Again, it's my soul is searching, it's seeking, it had to go through what it had to go through. My daughter needed, her soul needed something, so I had to be in that circumstance at the same time. But I think I lost a little bit of, I can tell you what really created the shift. Hugely, therapy did not do enough, but it
Mm.
did help me transform.
So now the therapy, did you choose it because of the work you wanted to go in, or would you have chosen therapy even if you were not going to pursue higher education in
Psychology.
psychology? Yeah.
I feel that there couldn't have been any chance that I wouldn't have done psychology, but if I didn't, the importance of it would not have come to the forefront as much of
Mhm.
understanding the depths of. So when we're studying psychology, we're studying about cognitive processes. We're studying about like what causes us to even think the way we do. How do we, motivation, how do we learn to hold memory? The intricate details that we went into as I was studying, it showed me how complex we are as beings and how much we need to invest in ourselves to really, it's like my EMDR therapist right now says it's a yarn and like you've got to pull all the strings to unwind and really see the actual core and essence. But there wasn't a chance I wouldn't have done psychology because I knew at that point, the only way that I could come out of my circumstance without getting into pills and chemicals was get the expertise of human behavior and why, I am feeling so depressed and anxious.
Yeah.
Obviously, my circumstances were obvious, but not everybody would have the same reaction to a certain circumstance, right? So I
Yeah,
was,
and no, and what you said is very important, right? Because you said that you sought someone who had more depth, right? More in-depth expertise in what you were dealing with. And that's important to point out, to those who are watching, to those who are listening. Yes, get a counselor or a therapist, but get someone who specializes in what or feel your situation is. Like for me, when my sister passed a few years ago, I'm like, I want a grief counselor. I want to talk to someone who is an expert in grief. Right now, I'm exploring relationships. I have a relationship counselor, someone who specializes in relationships. And so that's key. Sometimes we don't know, right? Sometimes we really don't know what it is that we need help with, which is fine. So, you go to someone, and then you grow from there. And then at some point, when you feel like you're not getting what you need, then start exploring other things. But if you have somewhat of an insight as to what you need healing with, what you need guidance and direction with, then definitely seek someone who is an expert in that. And another thing is, if the first shoe doesn't fit, try on another
yeah.
one, right? You don't have to stick with that individual, and definitely don't just say, "Oh, we didn't vibe, so I'm not, it's not for me." No, maybe that individual was not for you. So you sought someone, an expert for a reason. So don't give up on that. Just, find someone who fits.
And later in life, I had to do a little bit of that chopping or, jumping a little bit as I changed, eventually
Yeah.
moved forward in my life. But I will also say that titles doesn't always reflect. And I don't know how, it's never fit into my mind. I've not been the person ever to watch a movie review on Google and go watch the movie because of the review. It's never been me.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there are a lot of people who shop, including, for a therapist, just based on a title. Maybe talk to people as well as understanding you as an individual. I'm not the same person as you, right? I could be a much more sensitive individual. So, besides a title and expertise, I might need someone who is extra empathic with their words. So, understanding a little bit, maybe you don't have all the connection to your inner world, but a little bit of your needs and fitting that into references as well as not being afraid. I do tell my clients or friends, they tell me I've seen this therapist for a year and I'm still feeling maybe suicidal. And I'm like, a year is a very long time. You should see the results like that.
Hmm.
3 months, not more than 3 months. Same with me as a spiritual healer. If you're not seeing the result, you need to either talk to me or you need to change who you
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, definitely. So you hold certifications in advanced family tree lineage work. What is that? And how does inherited trauma actually live in the body?
Yeah, so this is a big topic. It's amazing what life has opened up for me through spiritual response therapy. That's the foundation to even the lineage work. So earlier I said in episode one, Reiki, I'm a Reiki practitioner as well, which is originated from Japan. It's a more commonly known alternative energy work healing method. It's very, very like widespread around the world. And many people know Reiki as that's the top, right? That's the topmost, like the best kind of energy work healing you can get. And I got into spiritual response therapy was introduced to me through a life circumstance, and I saw the massive shift that's unbelievable. No logic can be applied to it. Um, and I've learned that it's 100 levels of Reiki together. We literally say that as a fact. It's very, very deep because we're going into as spiritual response therapy and then eventually into lineage work. We're going into saying if a person, like you said, how trauma or grief lives in the body. If a person is suffering, whether that's a fever or it's cancer or it's someone's in the ICU or unexpected accident, it could be anything, marriage problems. Why is this person suffering? That's the one question we ask. And we say, where are the roots? right? The simple answer could be something XYZ happened. I was not watching. I crossed the road without watching. I was on the street and obviously the car had to hit me. But we said, but why did the soul do that also? Why did you even do that? You wouldn't want to. Everybody's innate desire is to live and thrive. That's a very natural desire. A tree always wants to grow and bear fruit. That's its natural process. So if something is going against the natural process, there is a problem. Something needs to be looked at. Right? So when we're looking at spiritual response therapy, we're saying, for example, my depression, psychology or therapy said, right, your mom passed away, you had grief, you didn't have a language, you didn't have an available adult, you were emotionally neglected. You also went through a lot of other like difficulties in life in the way other people treated you, and you stored all that in your body, in your mind, and that's why you're feeling depressed. But in spiritual response therapy, we're saying, but wait a minute, this has happened for 100 lifetimes that I've lived. I have repeated this pattern in the same, similar, or different circumstances in my evolution of consciousness. If you don't believe in incarnation, then it's your evolution. You're evolving in your consciousness. In your evolution journey, right, you have repeated a pattern several times in trying to figure out. It's kind of like that. What do you say? Is it the rat or who keeps running to the wall until they find a different route, and you hit yourself until you kind of found a dead end, but it takes a long time to realize this is who moved my cheese, right? That's a dead end. So your soul has repeated this in trying to find a different solution, but it's still doing the same thing. How can you find a different solution while doing the exact same behavior? So the depression is not a depression of just circumstance of one life. It is innate in my genes. Remember the conditioning I talked about? It has been repeated so many times that now it's a memory in my body, physical body. It's a memory in my emotional body. It's a pent up, it's like blocks that are put together that are thick and dark, and it's become very, very heavy, like a knotted ball. And it's sitting in your consciousness and trickling down everywhere. And as a result, I'll start attracting circumstances that'll trigger that pain. So I might find a difficult, maybe, coworker that'll trigger that sense of depression, or working circumstance that's very harsh, which is similar to maybe, the childhood grief. But that's also a reflection of the several lifetimes that I've repeated that pattern. Remember when I said, my soul said, finally, I need to separate myself from my twin flame and my best friend, cannot get married to him in this lifetime. No matter what happens, I have been coming to earth repeated times to try to feel the love a mother can give from a physical body to a baby and see that baby grow. In my dimension, I can wish it and it'll happen. I don't have to go through any process, biological process. So I've not felt that. So I've wanted that craving of what does it feel for a human? It's amazing that humans can do that. Like in my dimension, that is stunning that you can do that. So I said, I cannot repeat that same pattern. I've repeated it enough number of times. In spiritual response therapy and then advanced ancestral healing, we're saying, let's find all the roots. In ancestral healing, we're taking it a step further. We're not saying it's not just necessarily the multiple patterns a person or a soul has lived across many incarnations or evolution. It's also the grief that you're holding on that's unresolved of your parents, your great grandparents, your aunt, everyone's. Because imagine if I was smoking and if you were smoking and 10 people were smoking sitting in a room. We're building all of this big cloud of smoke. It's not just going to vanish, especially if the windows are shut and the doors are closed, meaning if nobody does anything to address that grief and trauma. I could have had an abortion, somebody could have had a miscarriage, somebody could have had a divorce, somebody's, like you said, you lost a cousin, all of that grief, if we are not going to actively put in the hard work to release that. And that doesn't mean saying, I'm okay. That's not releasing grief, right? It doesn't mean saying, I'll think about it later. I don't want to talk about it. It's too hard. That means we're suppressing it. It's sitting, the smoke is going to sit. The doors and the windows are shut. So then at some point, the tree, the family tree that needs to flourish is going to start falling because the roots are dying because all of that smoke is eating it up. That's ancestry where we're saying that We need to open the ancestry and open all of the grief, pain, trauma that's just sitting there, because of which you are carrying the burden, not that they're giving you the grief.
Right.
The smoke is just sitting there. And maybe you also decided that I'll try to help the tree. So there's different reasons. It's amazing the kind of things we've transformed autism, we've transformed schizophrenia. Give me things that the medical industry says is not possible. Give it to me. I will show you it is possible. It's amazing.
Right, with the work and with the intentionality. So in many of our communities, spiritual healing is still met with resistance, which is what we're talking about. Some of us were raised to believe prayer alone is the answer, or that struggle is just what you endure. What would you say to that woman?
For one, I will say again, you've got to sit with yourself and understand that many times the resistance is about the fear of uncertainty. When you cannot see, and we've been, I think the civilization, human civilization per se, has been taught that if I can see, touch, and understand, and see, touch, and and feel something, I can make more sense of it,
Mm.
then it's legit, right? There's more validation for it. So the unlearning part and the other parts are to learn to say, if I don't know something, it does not mean it doesn't work. That
Right.
is not true. It comes back to you've got to give your life a chance or accept this is how I'm going to live the rest of my life and it's not going to feel good.
Absolutely. You get to choose which direction you want to go in. So this conversation is really fascinating because it's not one that I really had before. I have talked about, Reiki and, different non-traditional medicine, et cetera. But this spirituality is different. So again, those who are watching or listening, this is just an alternative way. It's another way that you can look at something, consider something. So your tagline is go beyond and make miracles possible. What does going beyond actually look like in practice? Not spiritually in theory, but in everyday decisions a woman makes.
Yeah. To me, going beyond, and this is one of those other things that doesn't make sense to me, and it's not coming from a judgmental point of view. I genuinely feel unsure of why everybody doesn't want the very best in their life. And
Mm,
what do I mean by that? I've grown up, I've been an individual where I want the best of the best for myself and for my child, right? Or whoever, XYZ, that I absolutely love. If I want the best, I will have to put in a ton of the effort. If I have to put in a ton of the effort, that effort has to be consistent.
yeah.
And at the same time, I have to have an open mind to be willing to discover things that I might feel scary, like spiritual responsibility. Like, I don't know that stuff. I don't know what she's going to do, right? Be open, be willing to experiment and take some risks, and never think that because I put in so much effort, I should get the result right away. And just sitting on the result once you get it, right? So I've always been like, okay, if I maybe bought this house for my daughter, like I was able to, coming from $0 when I was getting divorced, starting my career at 27 in 2017 at 37 years, with my daughter being 6, no money in the bank, no family to support me. If I'm able to buy a house for her now, I'm not going to say this is enough. And not in terms of greed, but I'm going to say, what is my next step to grow individually, internally, and for her to ensure that I don't give her the struggles and I give her the best possible life. So for me, every area, whether that's cooking, whether that's learning to do my hair, like, things that I have to learn, I want to keep working
Yeah.
to improve. Like, there's no other two ways about it for me as a value.
Yeah, and here's one consideration for an answer to your question is why we don't is because of what you said. We don't want to put in the work. We don't want to put in that effort, and then we don't want to keep putting in the work, keep putting in the effort, right? And we're not getting those results right away. And so that's something too to consider those who are watching or listening. Sometimes it's the journey itself. right? Enjoy the journey itself. Pause, breathe, take time to actually enjoy what you're going through. There's so much that we miss when we don't. And so I'm like learning that because I've definitely been one of those ones like I plant the seed today. Why isn't it sprouting? Right away. So we definitely have to, pivot, rethink, shift our thoughts. So you mentioned something in the first episode when we talked, and I think you may have kind of touched on it just a little bit here. But again, if you haven't watched it yet, go and check it out. But you identify as a star seed and a highly sensitive person. What do those identities mean, and how do they shape the work you do with women?
Yeah, and here we can talk about the three twin flames as well.
Yeah.
So, as a star seed, this could be a common term for many who are deeply into energy work of different kinds. There's a lot of kind of like esoteric energy, occult, however you may state it, work. But it's not generally known in the layman, definitely not in my culture. It's completely like gibberish. What are you talking about? So a star seed means essentially you're not of earthly descent, which means that for several of my lifetimes, like thousands, I've not been an earthling. I've not been a human. I live in a different dimension. Like even right now, as I'm here, you can co-incarnate in multiple places. So the dimension where I'm from, I can break my consciousness into many bodies, and I could be born and across different planets and dimensions at the same time. So I'm Rima here, well, I could be a Rima on another or XYZ on another planet. Sounds crazy to hear. And there's no magic or voodoo in it. It's just a level of consciousness. It's like saying once you're at a PhD level, you understand concepts better, you can make things work faster and easier. It's sort of like that. So as a star seed, I don't necessarily have a need to come to Earth unless if it was something specific, like I mentioned, right? I live in a much more easy, like very like fun environment, where even lifespan and the rules of existence are different. But if I wanted to explore something specific that is not offered in my dimension, so every dimension, every planet has its circumstance, has a potential, and may not be able to give you certain things. Certain dimensions don't even have a physical body. You're existing without, it sounds crazy to hear, but you can exist without a physical body like this, like the body that you see on Earth. And we've seen some of that in movies, right? As aliens. Like part of that is true. They may not be exactly like that, but there are different rules of existence. Coming to Earth as a starseed, I have grown, I would say, in my consciousness where there are all of these. I'm trying to put it in very easy layman terms to not sound like a bit much, but the power to shift consciousness that I can bring, I can tell a person one sentence and somebody else or a therapist could be trying that for years, and that individual may be wanting to give up something for years, but that consciousness within me has the power to shift that like that. Like it's just the inner strength is so strong. So one of my motto has been, let's come to earth while I want to feel what it feels like to have a baby, but also to shift human consciousness because I have the ability to do that at a mass level very quickly. That's why also partly the SRT, spiritual response therapy work that I do, my clients will go to other practitioners and say sometimes that I don't get the results that you give me, Rima. Um, and to accelerate everything that I want to grow further in my consciousness. So while I'm living here, also while I'm here and living in XYZ dimension, I still have my goals. I want to continue to ascend spiritually further from wherever I'm like a PhD person may say, I still want to experience, it's not like education is enough, right? I still want to grow. For that, I can divide myself, my consciousness into multiple bodies, and they are my twin flames. So you could have up to any person, it's not just me, anybody, especially at a certain evolution level, can have up to 8 twin flames. Those twin flames may or may not incarnate with you at the same time, but if they do incarnate, that means that the whatever mission or motto they're working on internally, Now that's on 10 times. So it's like fast and furious, right? It's really the intensity is high. And the wishes for me, for example, is I wanted to combine three human incarnations in this one lifetime, and I wanted to get all the sufferings. Give me all the suffering of three lifetimes in one, because I decided I have the power wherever I'm at with my consciousness to decide that and say, I will suffer extra, but I want to fast track and for that, I'll create, because I alone cannot overcome all of the conditioning, all of the emotional, grief, ancestral grief, just in one body. So I'm going to divide myself into three bodies. So the main twin flame is my best friend, is my childhood friend. And that language didn't come to me in a logical mind until much later, like much more recently, a decade, I would say now. But then there are other twin flames that I met in my journey as I came to the United States and other, where I can say a lot. Like, so tell me if you wanted me to share more, but we met at crucial times and it kind of sparked certain things for transformations to happen.
So I want to focus more so, and so thank you for all of that, right? And then, as you said, we can go deeper, and others can look into that. They can actually get your information and reach out or read any materials that you share. But I want to focus more so on how it impacts the women that you work with. So, how do you use that in your work?
Because it transforms me so much so quickly. So if I hadn't met, for example, to give it more concrete language, my twin flame, when I came to Arizona, when I landed in Arizona, within a year and a half or within a year, I had met my twin flame. And I didn't even know I'd walked into a certain facility and there they were. And that'll trigger a lot of your unseen grief that's sitting there to come out. So now there's suddenly so many challenges in my marriage, so much more. Like it was always there, but I was not willing to see it, right? So now everything comes in the forefront. And because it triggers all of that in me, it forces you to grow. You cannot get out of a twin flame relationship. You can't say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to see this individual. That's not an option. Life circumstance will force you to be in the, so that that activation is constantly there. The only way out is you choose to grow. To grow, the only way out is you choose to work on yourself. So because I'm constantly working on myself, because I'm constantly either meeting this or that twin flame and in that activation and having challenges in life, I'm able to show that work to women because I am so innately transformed. That's where, again, it's hard for some people to realize your practitioner, whoever you go to, they really not only have to have done the work, they have to continue
Yeah,
to
to do
do
it.
the work to give you the results. The results are not coming from a technique or a training, they're coming from. So that's showing by women in terms of other tangible results who have brought many women out of suicidal, like being suicidal for years, have they're living healthy lives now, being able to bring them out of depression, suicide, anxiety, have brought people out of death situations where they're in ICU and the doctor has given a note, final notice. There's nothing that can be done. We've done emergency sessions, miracles. You'll see miracles where they've come out where even the doctors would have said we'll have to amputate their legs and hands, but they've come out and I have notes from the doctor. How is this even? This is not even possible. Because the problem is not physical in nature, but that's coming from my own transformation to be able to give that kind of perception of what needs to be worked on.
Yeah, and something you said is also key when you're researching a therapist, a coach, et cetera, is what work are they doing? Like what work have you done to get to this part, right? Like so not just your education, but also what work on yourself, what work are you currently doing? I think those are some great additional questions to ask. So let's kind of just do a rapid few questions as we're coming to the close. Healing is not
Optional.
okay. The version of me at 6 needed.
It needed a mother, and my best friend gave it to me like through his mother. It needed a mother. It truly just needed that nurturing.
I go beyond when.
I came to Arizona, United States, and hated being here and saying my life is over. It wasn't. It
All
wasn't.
right. And then the version of me today knows.
That there is there's so much more truth than what I can logically make sense of, and I don't need to figure it out today.
Love that. So, Rima, across two conversations, you've given this audience something rare. Like I said, never really had a spiritual conversation. Talked about, different forms of medicine, yes, but this has gone deep. And again, those who are wanting to go deeper, make sure you reach out or at least get to learn more about Rima. So it's been like a full picture here. The wound and the wisdom, the story and the work. Thank you for trusting this space with both. And to our listeners, this is the kind of conversations you share with the woman in your life who is still carrying something she's never named, with the daughter who needs to know her mother's story doesn't have to be her own. Pass it on. Again, connect with Rima. The links are in the show notes. Her work is for women who are done surviving and who are ready to go beyond. Rima, thank you. And this is Women of Color in Intimate Conversation, where we choose ourselves boldly.
Thank you again. That's like a way of humble gesture in my country, namaste. So thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. My pleasure.